Hey guys, welcome to this video. My name is John Watts. I'm a consumer protection lawyer. So you're dealing with a debt collector and they're calling you, they're writing you letters, maybe they're sending you emails or texts, and you're like, I'm just sick of it. I don't want to hear from them again. How do you stop that? How do you make your phone stop ringing? How do you stop the letters, the text messages, the emails? Well, you do that in one way of doing that is by a cease and desist type of letter. Now it's called cease communication, cease and desist. It's also communication where you tell the debt collector in writing, you say, I refuse to pay this debt. That's the same thing. So let's take a step back before we talk about how do you do it and what's the benefit of it, and then when can you sue these collectors. Let's take one step back and say, remember, we had a previous video where we talk about there's a time period to sue you. That's statute of limitation. There's a time period to credit report. Sometimes that's called the obsolescence period. And then the third time period is just time period to collect. Okay. So even if you do a cease communications, if they're within the statute of limitation, they can still sue you. And if they're within the time period to credit report, they can still credit report. They just can't call or write you with very, very few exceptions. So when do we use this? Well, typically this is used when you are beyond the time period to sue. So you're not worried about being sued, okay? So we're not necessarily trying to gather a bunch of information that could help us in a lawsuit if that's filed against us. This is where you get the letter from Calvary or Portfolio or Resurgent or Midland that says, hey, we're beyond the time period to sue. We're not going to sue you. Great. So you don't have to worry about that. So you send them this letter. And what I recommend is you say, look, I dispute owing any debt to you or any of your clients or your customers or whoever you're collecting for. I dispute owing any debt to anybody that is associated with you. And then you say, either I refuse to pay any debt that you have in your office on me, or I want you to cease communications or cease and desist. Those are all the same thing, okay? It's kind of like saying a car, an automobile, a vehicle. It's all the same thing when we're talking about it's got a steering wheel and four wheels on it, okay? And so you do that, and then you end the letter. It's pretty simple. Now, when the debt collector gets that and send it by certified mail, we've talked about that all the time. When the debt collector gets that, now it does a couple things. Okay, we've already talked about they're not going to sue you because they've told you that you're beyond the time period to sue. Now, if they haven't told you that, they may sue you. But let's put that aside. So what do they do if they are credit reporting? Well, we've had a bunch of videos on this. When you send a letter that says, I dispute owing any debt to you, and then they update your credit report, they have to mark it as disputed. They'll say, disputed by consumer or consumer disputes. Usually that's in the comments section underneath that collection account. If they do not do that, but they update your report after getting your letter, then you should look at suing them under section 1692E8 that says, don't do false credit reporting, including the failure to mark as disputed any account that's disputed. Okay. Now, what's the other thing though? Well, if they contact you, with very few exceptions, if they contact you, then they are violating that cease communication. So remember, if you say, I want you to cease and desist all communication, well, then they can't really contact you. And we have a video we did maybe a year ago where we went over the literal text of the FDCPA, and it'll list out the exceptions. But other than that, I mean, they start calling you, they write you letters, they send you emails, text messages. Those are going to violate the law. And so you sue them. Well, what if you say, I refuse to pay any debt? Well, again, it's the same thing, right? If they call you, they write you, they text you, they email you, then they're normally violating the law, and then you can sue them. And so we don't use this very often, but sometimes you just say, I don't want to hear from these guys anymore, particularly if they're not going to sue you. And they may not even be on your credit report. And so this can be a powerful tool. Now understand, and we've talked about this in other videos, when they get your letter, they may then just send it on to somebody else, and then you've got to start all over. Okay. but it can be a very powerful tool for when you send this and then either they update your credit report but do not mark it as disputed, well, then you sue them for that. Or they communicate with you after you've told them, I refuse to pay this debt or any debt, or you say cease and desist or cease communications, then you can look at suing them under the FDCPA. Here are some things you get with the FDCPA. You can get statutory damages up to $1,000. You can get actual damages. That can be mental anguish, okay? And so you go, finally, I don't have to worry about these jokers writing me, blowing up my phone anymore. I'm totally free of them. And then they write you letters and they call you and they text you and they email you. That's very upsetting. So naturally you would get actual damages, compensatory damages for that. And you also can have your attorney get paid attorney's fees and all the costs and expenses of the case. So we file a case, it may be $500 filing fee. And then we're spending lots of time on your case. Our hourly rate is $500 an hour as I'm recording this. So that debt collector makes us work 50 hours on your case. Well, that's a lot of money that they owe in attorney's fees. And so this can be a very valuable case for you to bring against them. You can get paid for your mental anguish, and it sends a message to all these jokers out there. Hey, obey the law. Stop violating the law. Stop bothering me. I told you to leave me alone. You better leave me alone. And again, remember also about the credit report, because you did say I dispute this debt and any debt that you claim I have. And so if they update your credit report without marking it as disputed, then you may have a very good lawsuit against them. So appreciate you guys watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Okay, bye-bye.